Hello everyone, Zahra here with Book Reading with Zahra. We will start with The Gift of Imperfection by Brené. It's a New York Times bestseller, and on the cover it says, "Let go of who you think you're supposed to be and embrace who you are. Your guide to a wholehearted life." This is video 1, and let's start with the preface. Owning our story and loving ourselves through that process is the bravest thing that we will ever do. Once you see a pattern, you cannot unsee it. Trust me, I've tried. But when the same truth keeps repeating itself, it's hard to pretend that it's just a coincidence. For example, no matter how hard I try to convince myself that I can function on 6 hours of sleep, anything less than 8 hours leaves me impatient, anxious, and foraging for carbohydrates. It's a pattern. I also have a terrible procrastination pattern. I always put off writing by reorganizing my entire house and spending way too much time and money buying office supplies and organizing systems every single time. One reason it's impossible to unsee trends is that our minds are engineered to seek out patterns and to assign meanings to them. Humans are a meaning making machine. And for better or worse, my mind is actually fine tuned to do this. I spent years training for it, and now it's how I make my living. As a researcher, I observe human behavior so I can identify and name the subtle connections, relationships, and patterns that help us make meaning out of our thoughts, behaviors, and feelings. I love what I do. Pattern hunting is wonderful work, and in fact, throughout my career, my attempts at unseeing were strictly reserved for my personal life and those humbling vulnerabilities that I love to deny. That all changed in November of 2006 when the research that fills these pages smacked me upside the head. For the first time in my career, I was desperate to unsee my own research. Up until that point, I had dedicated my career to studying difficult emotions like shame, fear, and vulnerability. I had written academic pieces on shame, developed a shame resilience curriculum for mental health and addiction professionals, and written a book about shame resilience called I Thought It Was Me. I thought it was just me. In the process of collecting thousands of stories from diverse men and women who lived all over the country, ranging in age from 18 to 87, I saw new patterns that I wanted to know more about. Yes, we all struggle with the shame and the fear of not being enough. And yes, many of us are afraid to let our true selves be seen and known. But in this huge amount of data were also story after story of men and women who were living these amazing, inspiring lives. I heard stories about the power of embracing imperfection and vulnerability. I learned about the inextricable connection between joy and gratitude and how things that I take for granted, like rest and play, are as vital to our health as nutrition and exercise. These research participants trusted themselves and they talked about authenticity and love and belonging in a way that was completely new to me. I wanted to look at these stories as a whole. So I grabbed a file and a Sharpie and wrote the first word that came to my mind on the tab: wholehearted. I wasn't sure what it meant yet, but I knew that these stories were about people living and loving with their whole hearts. I had a lot of questions about wholeheartedness. What did these folks value? How did they create all of this resilience in their lives? And what were their main concerns and how did they resolve or address them? Can anyone create a wholehearted life? What does it take to cultivate what we need? What gets in the way? As I started analyzing the stories and looking for reoccurring themes, I realized that the patterns generally fell into one of the two columns. For simplicity's sake, I first labeled these do and don't. The do column was brimming with words like worthiness, rest, play, trust, faith, intuition, hope, authenticity, love, belonging, joy, gratitude, and creativity. The don't column was dripping with words like perfection, numbing, certainty, exhaustion, self sufficiency, being cool, fitting in, judgment, and scarcity. I gasped the first time I stepped back from the poster paper and took it all in. It was the worst kind of sticker shock. I remember mumbling, no, 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 how can this be? Even though I wrote the list, I was shocked to read them. When I code data, I usually go into deep research mode. My only focus is on accurately capturing what I heard in the stories. I don't think about how I would say something, only how the research participants said it. I don't think about what an experience would mean to me, only what it meant to the person who told me about it. I sat in the red chair at my breakfast room table and stared at these two lists for a very long time. My eyes wandered up and down and across. I remember at one point I was actually sitting there with tears in my eyes, with my hand across my mouth, like someone just heard delivered a bad news to me. And in fact, it was bad news. I thought I'd find the wholehearted people were just like me and doing all of the same things that I was doing, working hard, following the rules, doing it until I got it right, always trying to myself better, raising my kids exactly by the books, and. After studying tough topics like shame for a decade, I truly believed that I deserved confirmation that I was living right. But there's a tough lesson that I learned that day and every day since. How much we know and understand ourselves is critically important. But there is something that is even more essential to living a wholehearted life: loving ourselves. Knowledge is important, but only if we're being kind and gentle with ourselves as we work to discover who we are. Wholeheartedness is as much about embracing our tenderness and vulnerability as it is about developing knowledge and claiming power. And perhaps the most painful lesson of that day hit me so hard that it took my breath away was it was clear from the data that we cannot give our children what we don't have. Where we are on our journey of living and loving with our whole heart is a much stronger indicator of parenting success than anything we can learn from all the how to books. Thank you. This is end of the video 1. See you in video 2 for the second part of the preface.